Hi everyone, I'm Elisa Vitti, founder of Flow Living, and we're celebrating the 10-year anniversary of Flow Living, helping women recover from hormonal issues naturally. As in celebration, I'm leading a series of conversations with some of my favorite female founders, athletes, activists, and leaders who have been on their own hormonal journey because, we're all hormonal. And we're here to unpack really why it's important for you to understand your hormones and how they work, to remind you that suffering is optional, and to encourage you to be in loving action with your body and its hormones. Joining me today is Pnquetzani of Indigimama, a matriz womb healer, herbalist, doula, who specializes in Mesoamerican medicine and Mexican folk healing. She uses her sacred hands to heal via bodywork, traditional foods, and herbalism. Using inherited indigenous knowledge from her Valley of Mexico and Northern Mexican lineages, Pnquetzani has been serving her community since 2000 and has ushered over 8,000 BIPOC members through her online school, Indigescuela. Her first book, and the first of its kind, on Mexican traditional medicine for postpartum healing, is coming in 2024, and I know I'm excited about that. I am so thrilled to have you here, Pnquetzani. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for that beautiful introduction.
Well, when I first met, I always tell you, when I first met you, we met on a panel, and I just remember, even over the Zoom, energetically, I could feel your whole energy signature, and it literally felt like I was being covered in honey, dripping sweet, wonderful. And I was like, I don't know who I'm meeting right now, but I love her. And then I got to know you during the panel and all the incredible work you're doing and the reclamation and sharing of all of this sacred, important information. And I, just loved you more. So, I've just been sort of fangirling you for a long time, and we collaborate whenever we can.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
The fangirling is mutual.
Well, I feel like we're lucky when we do the work that we love, that's sort of like we're always in good company. So thank you for being part of this today. I'm here, as you know, to just have everybody tell their own stories about their experience of hormones, because I've told my story a million times with my PCOS, but 80% of women are suffering from hormonal issues at some point in their lifetime. It's an insane statistic, and we're on a mission at Flow Living to kind of improve that statistic, because it's too many women. But I'm so curious what your experience of dealing with hormones has been like over your lifetime so far, your hormones, your cycle. How's that been going for you?
Yeah. I mean, so far, so good.
Good.
The first big hormonal shift that I had in my life was when I was 18. And during that time, I felt like I was doing the responsible thing. That's when I first became sexually active. And first thing I did is go to Planned Parenthood to get birth control. And I'm over here thinking that I'm doing what's best for my body. I'm, in there, and they're telling me all of my options. I had done research before. And so we land on the depot shot, every 3 months. And that first shot was really hard on my body. I felt tired. I felt mental fog. And I felt my intuition just die. It was just gone. I felt a little bit muted, like my joy was just a little bit muted. Like if my joy was here, maybe it was here, And so I wasn't sure if it was a shot or if it was just, changes growing up.
And isn't that just so frustrating? Because if you had simply been told, okay, these could be some of the implications, the side effects, these things could happen, then instead of thinking it was you, which is, I mean, I cannot tell you how many times I've heard that, like people go on this medication, whatever form you take, depot, pill, ring, and they haven't been told, like, oh yes, this could change your personality. This is definitely going to impact your brain chemistry. You may have an increased risk for depression. You're not going to be attracted to the same partner you would normally be. All these things, that could be changed. And we start to question ourselves. And instead of thinking that it's the medication, we think it's something that maybe it's me, maybe it's my life. And then you keep going with it.
Yeah. And I talked to my doctor, and my doctor was really dismissive. They were like, no, the only side effect is loss of period. And they were very rude when I asked questions. And especially, because I was young and brown and in a clinic, like they were just really like belittling. I'd bring up research. Well, I read this, or I researched this, and I found that these are actual legitimate side effects. And they would mock me and tell me, no, where'd you read that? No, none of that stuff is true. This is what I'm telling you. So I got the second shot. I got the second shot, and I got to the point where I was just emotional, tired, drained. I felt unhappy. And I realized that I was in a relationship that I didn't like. I thought it was the person. It was probably a little bit of hormones, a little bit of the person. And I left that relationship and stopped hormonal birth control. And literally the next month, things were looking better. And every month after that, my hormones just evened out. And I realized it was the shot all along.
And you were right. And your instincts were right. And you had that unfortunate but all too common experience of being gaslit in that environment where you were bringing up valid and reasonable questions and concerns, and you were not being addressed in the way that was, commensurate with those questions and concerns. But luckily, the circumstances got you to a place where you were, no longer needing that medication, and you started to feel like yourself again. How did it, what did you decide from that moment on in regards to managing your birth control for yourself now that you had that experience?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I do is my go-to for everything. I went to my grandma. And I was like, Mom, like, what do you do again? Because she was practicing natural fertility for decades before she went on hormonal birth control. She eventually did. She had 8 children. And so her first time on hormonal birth control was like somewhere in between the kids. And so I asked her, she would always tell me, I remember her telling my aunts, are you timing your cycles, when you're ovulating? And so I asked her, how do you do it? And she was like, oh, simple. You just track your period, your ovulation. And she started telling me how to track my cycle, that I could only get pregnant a few days within that cycle. And I didn't
realize.
Your
grandmother telling you this. Oh, so I love that. I mean, it's like a fantasy to have that kind of intergenerational transmission of knowledge that, men just do this for each other in every knowledge vertical everywhere around the world. But we have been really blocked from doing that. And I just love hearing any story about that, because my grandmother's never told me anything about anything. So neither did my mom. So it's so nice when I do hear that it happens occasionally. And I think we need a lot more of it.
Yeah, it's really weird because my mom said that her mom didn't tell her anything. At the time, my grandma was busy working. And by the time that I got to be around my grandmother, like she had all the time to pour into me. And with that bit of information, I'm like, oh, I could only get pregnant 3 to 5 days in my cycle. Let me do some deep dives. And I read that book, what is it? How to take control over natural fertility.
Taking charge of your fertility by Dr. Toni Weschler.
Yeah.
Yes. With the cervical fluid pictures. Revolutionary book.
For sure. Yep. And with that, I with my grandmother's knowledge, with the knowledge of the book, I really sunk into my intuition, and I really paid deep attention to my body when I'm ovulating. I'm ovulating right now, by the way. So
I'm bleeding right now, thus the
yeah.
red
Oh
shirt.
yeah. Oh nice.
Like to celebrate with color.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Yeah, and so I realized, wow, the dreams that I have during ovulation, the dreams that I have right before ovulation are different than dreams throughout my cycle. They're different than the dreams during my period, and after my menstrual cycle or my period after bleeding. And so I was like, okay, I know what my dreams are like. I know what my energy's like. I know what my body feels like. And I know timing wise what it looks like on a calendar. And I used that for years, and I referred other folks to resources. And little by little, in the healing work that I was doing, like it really informed my approach to helping other women learn about their bodies. I started hearing more and more stories about how other women of color were being dismissed by their doctors, and how other people were like, my case was really easy compared to a lot of my clients. Like some of them lost so much weight. I had someone come in one time who was like 95 pounds. She was so weak, she couldn't even stand up straight. And it was because of the IUD crash. So she had the IUD, they took it out, and her hormones just went, yeah, they went wild.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I just want to put a little bit of a underscore, put a frame around the fact that you really were able to tune in and learn what the phases of your cycle felt like in your own skin. And that is such a special thing to do. And unfortunately, women and girls are not guided to doing that process, right? They're guided to and pushed almost to sort of suppress the cycle, if you will, as the only way to deal with any issues that you might be having. And instead, like you're saying, to feel the distinct feelings of, you know, who you are during your ovulatory phase versus who you are during your luteal or your bleeding phases. You're a different you. It's not hugely different. But on the interior of it, you know, when you practice that sort of cyclical awareness, it's different enough for you to notice, you know. No one else might be able to see from the external, but you definitely on the inside of your own skin can feel which phase you're in if you give yourself the chance to figure it out. And I just love that you did that. You know, I would love if every woman did that. And I think it's amazing that you were able to do that, because it's not like there were a ton of resources for you to even figure that out. So that just that connection that you had to your inner guidance, your inner wisdom, the support you had from your abuela, that whole journey, you know, such a beautiful thing, such a great role modeling for all of us to be able to do that for ourselves.
Yeah, and I'm really glad you mentioned the support from my abuela, because her daughters, you know, my abuela didn't have the talk with her own daughters, but she had them with her granddaughters. And so my mom and my tias, they were like, no, don't do that. You're going to get pregnant. It's not going to work. My mom said that, but look how many kids she has. She has 8 kids. And she's like, no, I had those kids on purpose. When I didn't want to have kids, I didn't have kids.
I believe that. But I also love what your grandmother's, you know, represents, like a beautiful, healthy, long, fertile window that so many women today struggle with. You know, the fact that she was able to have 8 children is almost something that women in today's society can't even conceive of conceptually, not just to actually physically do it. It's more than just not being on birth control, and that's why she had so many children. It's also that she was taking care of herself in the ways that you now teach women with this indigenous sort of herbal perspective and foods and the whole, all those practices, that she had such robust hormonal health all her life. Right. And what a beautiful thing to see that that's possible too, because I think a lot of people, not only are we raised to think that our periods are going to be miserable, childbirth's going to be miserable, and then when you get older, it's going to be miserable, and maybe you have to take out your uterus, and that's the relief that you'll get someday. You
don't need your uterus anymore.
I like the air quotes. Because it's crazy. It's great. The logic of that is nuts.
Yeah. It's very male centered, and you obviously don't care to think about what your uterus can do for you besides bearing children. Like, there's so much more your uterus does for you.
Tell us your perspective on that.
One thing about your menstrual cycle is I love putting my hands on my uterus every day to feel her position and her size, because as I'm going through my cycle, there's a growth and a shrinking that the uterus does all month long. Every day, the uterus is expanding all the way up until you bleed. And my clients really get a kick out of this, because they'll come in for their sobado de matriz. I do womb massage, and I'll put my hands on their uterus, and I'll be like, "Oh, you're gonna get your period in 3 days, aren't you?" And they're like, "Oh my goodness, yes! How do you know that?" And I'm like, "It's the size of your uterus. Feels ready. You're almost there."
I mean, this is just next level, because you're absolutely right. The uterus does get bigger, obviously, because the endometrium, the lining, is being manufactured, and then it's, holding more structure, tissue, right? And it expands a little bit, and you absolutely could learn how to feel for that. You could probably also learn to feel for the cervical position too, as well, to know when you're ovulating. But I mean, gosh, just the idea that women would be able to be a little bit more hands-on with their uterus would be such a wonderful practice every day to connect with where you are in the cycle. That's lovely.
Yeah, you feel it larger, and you also feel it a little lower. So it's like, ooh, nice and large and low. You're like, okay, there's going to be bleeding soon. But that's not all the uterus does. The uterus is a muscle that makes up a part of your pelvic floor support system. And a lot of us don't realize that the broad ligament of the uterus actually forms the part of your peritoneum. So like your belly is here, and your pelvic floor is at the bottom, and your uterus takes up about this much space, right, with the uterus and the broad ligaments. So it's holding up everything that is above your, even like above like your belly button. It helps to support your colon, your entire colon. It separates the bowels from your bladder, so that everything's not all squished, and you're not having peasing all the time.
That's a hilarious word. Not heard that one before. Right? I mean, I just love this perspective, because, when you bring all this information, even myself, who has done this work for 20 years, listening to you describe it, it's like a whole other level of reverence and direct connection that we could have, that so many of us just don't have. We're not even aware of all that this area of the body is doing for us. It's literally, like you said, holding us up from the root, and to have an opportunity through that knowledge to build a different relationship with our body, a relationship that is loving, compassionate, accepting. I just think it's such a gift. And that's what I think is so special about you using your platform to share this information with so many women, because it's transformative, on an emotional level and a physical level. It's, healing your hormonal health is important because you got to take care of your health.
Mhm.
But healing yourself as a woman in this environment that's told you to stay disconnected from your womb, from this cycle, I think
Yeah.
emotionally there's a lot of gifts there too.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that we believe in Mesoamerican medicine is that the uterus is a vessel. And in a lot of the hieroglyphs, you'll see the uterus depicted as a steaming pot. It's like a bowl overflowing with water and steam is coming out. And yes, isn't that just like,
It's a good
wow?
image.
It is. And it's so descriptive because your uterus is a warm organ that requires heat. It requires warmth. And you want to be wet. You want to be overflowing. And that is an indication also of good hormonal health. And the steam means the breath of life, meaning fertility. You want to be fertile. Even if you don't want to have a child, if you're in your childbearing years, fertility is the baseline of health. And so, this depiction of the uterus being a beautiful bowl, a pot, a steamy pot, just gives me like, oh, it gives me all the good feelings and goosebumps. There is a website about hysterectomy awareness. It's called HERS. It's Hysterectomy Education Research something. And I was reading through. They have this whole survey for people who get their uterus removed, and there are all these side effects that they're pulling together from actual folks who've had the surgery because of the lack of awareness, because of the lack of research, because of the lack of follow up with doctors. This organization put together a whole field of like, okay, this amount of people have rectal prolapse, this amount of people have vaginal prolapse. But the most surprising thing for me that really affirmed that the work that I'm doing is so crucial is a large amount of the people who removed their uterus felt that they could no longer feel nurturing. It was harder for them to love. It was harder for them to feel a nurtured connection with their children and their partners. Isn't that wild?
Wow. I mean, it's emotional to hear it. And it's also upsetting to know that that's still the most commonly performed surgical procedure worldwide as the ultimate solution for any women's hormonal health issue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even just the name, like hysterectomy, and the way it's like hysteria, like you're going crazy, like if your uterus makes you crazy or irrational, like that whole frame of women, because we have a circular cycle where one face of us, one mask of us, one presentation of ourselves comes in front of the other in that cycle, because we remove one mask. Today I am super social and juicy and fertile, and I'm going to go out, and then maybe later on I'm the introspective, antisocial, let me watch a movie because I feel like crying to a good rom-com, you know, with alone or with a one friend, some type of intimate thing, you know. Just because we go through these phases, that doesn't make us irrational or over emotional. It means that we are human beings that move just like the earth moves, in phases, in cycles, in seasons. And for us, that season is not 12 months long. For us, that season, those seasonal changes is 28 to 32 days.
And, accepting that we're dynamic hormonal creatures, I think is such an important part of a hormonal healthcare journey because, fixing your symptoms is one thing,
Mm-hmm.
but to prevent symptoms from evolving, new ones from, evolving, or from things recurring,
Mm-hmm.
the only path forward that I know you have seen, that I have seen, is to really be in alignment with this cyclical pattern, to support it, to nurture it properly, so that you can really optimize your health physically and physiologically, but also, you know, to experience with joy the full spectrum of your emotional self as well. I think it's just so logical that the form of our self-care would follow the function of our hormonal patterns, you know, and
for sure,
you know, not for nothing, but the guys are doing that left and right. You know what I mean? So but they're doing it for their pattern. And the problem is, I think for so many of us as women, we've been trying to fit our self-care into that pattern, which has nothing to do with our hormonal reality. And it creates a lot of problems and tensions in the body and imbalances that we then either don't know what to do about or ignore. And I, you know, I think it's so important that you know that there are things that you can do, and you can get your sense of self back from a health point of view through your hormonal self-care.
Yeah, one of the things that's been on my hormonal mind lately is nursing, and how pregnancy, postpartum, and nursing impacts your body. I recently had a longer cycle. Usually it's 28 days for like maybe like the last 18 months. It's been about, 28 days on the dot. And so my cycle went from 28 to 32 days, which is a huge jump for my one body. And so I was thinking back, like, well, what has changed in my life? What has changed in my lifestyle? And I realized, so I was nursing too, I realized that my 5-year-old weaned himself. I was like, oh my goodness, I weaned.
Yeah.
We weaned.
Yeah.
And so that had a huge impact on my hormones. And of course, he's my third baby. He has had a huge impact on my hormones. Like since the day I got pregnant, I threw up all 9 months with him and him alone. Like he's just been my had a big impact on my body. So of course, the fact that he would wean himself would make a big impact in my hormones. And seeing myself as not only a dynamic human being, but my hormones are connected to my children, and each child is different. And each child has a different impact on my hormones.
There's some beautiful studies out now about how they know for certain that the fetal cells of the baby that you're carrying end up permanently embedded in different parts of the maternal brain, heart, body, throughout the body, but especially the brain and the heart. So structure, I mean, when I first heard this, I almost wept. It's so beautiful. So, the pregnant female heart doubles in size to accommodate all the increased blood flow needs. So that's a problem, technically speaking, postpartum, right? And it's the fetal heart cells that cause the maternal heart to heal and go back to its normal size. I mean, and then of course you feel this never-ending bond of love with your child, because their heartbeat and your heartbeat are now one different heartbeat, right? And of course you can intuitively, psychically know what your child is thinking and feeling, because their brain cells are in your brain. Their heart is beating in your heartbeat. It's very poetic, but also measurable and really incredible. So, I mean, the truth of it is your intuition about the fact that those things are connected is so true. And it's very cool that we live in a time in science where we can kind of also see it measurable in some ways. I mean, we're just at the beginning of starting to measure some of these things in women's health. Obviously, there isn't enough research being done, but I mean, it's so incredible. And then another fun fact for any breastfeeding mom, just know that your breastfeeding daily caloric output is the equivalent of walking 7 miles. So, I highly encourage you, if you are postpartum, to connect with Indigimama's work, because to nourish yourself properly postpartum is essential for hormonal health, is essential for you recovering your cycle, recovering and optimizing your fertility for the next time around, to really care for yourself, replenish deeply. So many women get that wrong postpartum, where they kind of want to, and I'm going to use air quotes this time, get their body back, postpartum, and they're eating all the cold foods. And now we're going to see Pnquetzani get really cringy. Cold foods and raw salads, and this makes her very unhappy. You want to have that steaming pot. The steaming
right,
yes. So think about what goes in that. It's not a salad. And so, to recover hormonally postpartum is a very specific type of nutritional kind of strategy that I think you've really honed in on, and can support so many women in that way. I'm curious, obviously your own personal experience, but why do you feel so called to the work that you do?
Yeah. Ooh, so many reasons. So many reasons. Before I answer that, I just want to say I love when Western science catches up to Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous science. I'm like, yes, this is what I've been saying. This is what I've been telling you.
Not for nothing. Every medication in pharma comes from the rainforest, pretty much. Come on. So, of course, that's an inevitable crossover. Yeah. But I think that you say that is important, because what we should do is trust more in our ancestral knowledge, and wait with expectant knowing that there will be studies to confirm some of these things, right? Because it keeps happening.
Yeah. I love that, expectant knowing.
Certainty.
Yes. So one of the reasons why I'm so called to this work is because I feel that every woman deserves to be in touch with their body. I believe that we all deserve sovereignty and autonomy over our body. And if we're not taught the reality of what happens in our bodies, if we're told this much, yet we rely on other people this much to help us, to heal us, to support us, then we're not doing everything that we can to help ourselves. So I want to help women and people with uteruses have the tools to care for themselves, not only during pregnancy, not only during postpartums, but their whole entire lives. Because our bodies are not meant to break down in a certain age, and you're not destined to have to wear adult diapers. You're not destined to have to go through a shitty ass 5 years of menopause. These are things that natural medicine actually prevents. A lot of the work that I do is preventative care. And I always tell my postpartum clients, whatever you do 10% of that. If you think that you could go to the fridge, walk to the fridge, open it up, serve yourself a glass of milk, then 10% of that is, hey, can someone bring me a glass of milk?
I think I love how you frame so many things, doing the 10% of things, having a extended perspective on the postpartum period, especially around breastfeeding and the kind of support and care that you need to be able to do that successfully. But above all, one of the main reasons why I wanted to have you as part of this special series that I'm doing is because you really have dedicated your work to making sure that women have a relationship with their womb. And, I don't really know anyone else who's doing that in this way, very hands-on way, to have a relationship with your actual physical uterus for your whole life, because it's in you your whole life, and it's the root of who you are. And I just think it's so important. And I'm so every time I spend time with you, just feel energized in such a different kind of way, because I also think you embody you know, because of the work that you do, just a very feminine based approach to work in general, which is also something that we all need a lot of visual modeling around, working more from the feminine than from the masculine. So I just appreciate you as someone who I love to learn from. So thank you for joining me today. What do you want women to know? Just like if you could give them like one thing to walk away with from this juicy conversation, what do you want them to know about dealing with any hormone problems that they might be having, or anything about their hormones in general?
I want women to know that you're not broken. Your hands are the perfect hands to heal you, to heal your heart, to heal your hormones, to heal your body. You can be your own healer. Yes, get external support, but you're the one who lives in your body. Your feet are the ones that walk every day. Your legs are the ones who hold you up. Your hips, your back, your head, all of this is working for you 24/7. And you could either choose to hand over your power to someone else who's not with you 24/7, who hasn't been with you your whole life, who doesn't want to see you thrive and shine and be in radiant health as much as you desire it. Or you can take that into your own hands and do the things that you need to do to help yourself feel that way every day for the rest of your life.
I love that. I think that's such an important message of being in leadership, taking charge, and taking action to take care of yourself every day, and not settling for anything less than what you desire. I think that's so important.
Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing this time with me and your story. It's so important that we talk about these things, and I think you embody just so many beautiful practices and just an approach that is so important. And I love how your work is contributing to changing the narrative for women's health care. We at Flow Living are here to help with providing support where women need with their issues with hormonal issues. And we're really excited that we have some new ways to make that even easier and more accessible, and in some cases free. And we're just so thrilled to be having these conversations. And thank you so much for being a part of this celebration with us. And I'm so excited for this next chapter of things. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And congratulations. I'm so happy. I'm so happy that you're going to have this resource out for folks. I know that your book, The Woman Code, is one that I recommend to all of my clients because of the way it breaks down hormones for everyone to understand. It doesn't, they don't fall off. It's not boring. And, it's not in this, it's language for us to understand our own bodies and our own hormones, which is what I want for all of us. So,
and I'm super proud that the book finally got published in Spanish, Código Mujer, so we can read it in both languages, should you desire that. It took a minute, but I was like, we have to do it. So I'm really loving that that's available now. But yeah, thank you. I'm glad the book has been a resource for so many people, both books. There's so much to do, and I'm so thrilled to be able to share all of that with women like you. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.